So yesterday I took GoPro and mounted on the top of my camera. I was filming the wedding. I thought that in good light, especially outside the venue on the exit, I just wanted to film slow motion of confetti bombs actually. I thought, yeah, I might use it in my clips just a little bit, but I'm not happy with the footage. So I decided today to test every combination of settings, including sharpness and frame rate and resolution, as well as colors, to see, and ISO, to see which camera settings are the best for my liking, are the best looking, and why I got this plasticky looking footage. So stay with me for every single of GoPro 9 settings. So this is wide, 24 frames a second, 1080, sharpness is medium, ISO is minimum 100, maximum 800. It's on auto, but it's in between that. My shutter speed is on auto, and exposure compensation is -0.5, just to add a little bit of more dynamic range. Colors are GoPro. I don't want to mess up with colors. I'm gonna do it in the very end, just because I don't really want to color grade this footage unless I need it. So wide, medium, sharpness, 24 frames a second. And now is the same settings, 24 frames a second, 1080, sharpness on medium, but I changed the view to linear mode. Linear mode should give less distortion. Don't really should have any impact on how the footage looks like, how the footage is graded, or how plasticky footage was, but it's just different now. And now the last setting from 1080, 24 frames a second, sharpness medium, the same ISO 100 to 800, but change the lens setting to narrow, so a bit more narrow. I'm holding that from the same position, so that is important. It's more narrow, so you can see me a bit closer, so less in a frame. So it should be the less distorted possible, straight from the camera. Okay, now I started to film with 50 frames a second. So 1080, 50 frames a second. It's narrow, sharpness is medium, and ISO 100 to 800, and exposure compensation minus, so -0.5. How it looks like. So let's go to linear mode. So now the same thing, 1080, 50 frames a second, but in linear mode. And the last thing, wide mode, 1080, 50 frames a second, sharpness medium, ISO 100 to 800, exposure compensation -0.5. Now it is the time to change resolution. The resolution now is 2.7K, which I never intend to shoot with, but for the purpose of that test I'm doing it. If it becomes better, I will have it as my favorite one. So I'm just looking for the best possible combination. So 2.7K, 50 frames a second, wide, ISO 100 to 800, sharpness to medium, exposure compensation -0.5. 2.7K, 50 frames a second, in linear mode. The rest of the settings are the same. ISO stay auto, between 100 and 800, and exposure compensation -0.5. And the last thing, I changed to linear mode, 2.7K, 50 frames a second, linear mode, narrow mode, narrow, very tight, narrow, and the rest of the settings are the same. And that's gonna be the last thing, 4K, 24 frames a second, linear mode, the rest of the settings are the same. So I just want again to keep GoPro footage as easy as possible. I don't want this to color grade too much, but the next few seconds gonna be flat profile, flat color profile. That's all been filmed in a GoPro color profile. So last bit is gonna be to be graded. So that is flat color profile graded. So let me see which I like, which I prefer. I'm gonna switch back now to GoPro colors, which actually I prefer. I mean, I like. It was okay initially, but I will change the sharpness now. So I will stay within 4K, 50 frames a second, but with sharpness, testing the sharpness. And now it's time for 4K. Again, I never intend to shoot in 4K because the files are huge, they're very large, and I want to keep this GoPro footage as simple as possible. But again, if it's gonna be best, because I never tested, I will hold on to that. So 4K, 50 frames a second. So the previous mode was wide mode. In 4K you don't have narrow, so the tightest one is linear mode. 4K 50 frames a second, linear mode, ISO 100 to 800, and exposure compensation -0.5. Okay, so now I am in 4K 50 frames a second, linear mode, GoPro color profile, and sharpness is down to low. So I will try to see that if I like that sharpness, or I can sharpen it a little bit in post-production. Maybe it's gonna be better for skin. Yes, and I'm looking now to have the best looking skin, as I wanted to initially to film that, to have a small clip of my basically wedding footage, which was outside, as you remember initially. So let's change the sharpness now to high. And now the last thing, 4K 50 frames a second, linear mode, and sharpness bump up to high. I am not sure if it's good for the skin. You see probably everything here, and it might be my problem that I put too much sharpness into the skin. I mean, too much sharpness into my footage, and the footage looks too much artificial. So let's jump now into computer, and let's see if my computer will handle all of those files at all.